Anna, you've had a successful career at Goldman Sachs, nearly 25 years, managing partner, and I know you're passionate about helping other women, both externally and within Goldman Sachs itself. So I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your career, your successes, hurdles along the way, and yeah, how you've helped women along the way as well.
So I guess the first point to make is I joined Goldman Sachs in 1996 in our credit department, and my direct line manager at the time, the guy I was reporting to, was Mark Carney, and he was running sovereign credit for Goldman Sachs. I joined a firm which was private. We had not yet done our IPO, and frankly the landscape was pretty different to what we're seeing today. And I guess it's quite astonishing when I think back to what it was like when I started in 96. So we didn't have the internet, we hardly had mobile phones, and our business looked very different from the one we have today. I would say there are certain things which are constant though, and which I think will remain critical to our business as we go forward. And I think you can sort of sum it down into three things. Is one, breadth of relationships and with our clients. I mean, ultimately, we are an organization which live and die by our clients and what our clients do. Two is sort of the excellence of what we're doing and that we are perceived to be leaders in our core businesses. And then three, and I really believe in this one, is that we reflect the reality of the world around us. And it is clear that investment banking has had, during this 23 years that I've been at GS, we've had many ups and downs, and they've taken different shapes and forms. But ultimately, I generally believe that if we reflect the reality of our clients, whether that's be it in terms of what their businesses do, what's important, the critical success factors to them, but also, frankly, that we look like them. And we'll talk a little bit more about diversity, but one of the reasons behind our investment and drive and frankly belief in why diversity is important in all type of shapes and forms is because otherwise we're going to rapidly become irrelevant to our clients, I think, if we don't look like them.
Yeah, thank you. Goldman Sachs has a strong belief in the importance of investing in future leaders, women future leaders. I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how Goldman Sachs itself is performing in terms of diversity. We know that in financial services and also to some extent, or even to a worse extent in fintech, the diversity figures aren't great, especially in terms of investing in women-led tech companies. So I just wondered, if you could tell us a little bit about that, what Goldman Sachs is doing, and also what you're doing to improve the situation as well.
So it's interesting because I have a personal view on this, having been a woman in this industry for the last 20 years plus within GS. And then there's an institutional view. First of all, I guess I have actually, and I remember when I mentioned I started in 96, and we had an analyst class at the time, which were 35 people, I recall, and there were 6 women. It's about 20% of the class. Today, as of our entry class last summer, it's 50-50. So we have really definitely moved the dial on diversity and on representation very significantly over that period. Now, as anyone in the UK who operates in the UK will know, there's a lot of focus on these gender gap numbers, which come out every year, which I personally think is a good thing that is published. And I know Jane Ann Gadia very well, who's been behind some of these initiatives, and I think I'm Scandinavian, so anyone who knows how board diversity was pushed very early on in the Scandinavian countries know how that has moved, for example, in Norway. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to put out numbers and having to articulate around some of these considerations. Now, we have, as a firm, set a number of targets. One is incoming classes should be 50-50, which we have achieved. We actually wanted to achieve it by 2021, but we've already done it.
Okay, great.
But there is, frankly, to move this gender pay gaps, you really need to also focus on representation at the more senior levels, because that's where the numbers really start to matter. And we do have a target of 30% by 2023 of senior levels, which we qualify as vice presidents up. And let's see. I mean, it takes a long time to grow senior professionals in this industry. And one of the issues that we have, and I don't know whether it's the same in other industries, that the attrition, i.e. when we have women leaving, very often they leave the industry entirely. And therefore, it's difficult to recruit back in. But we have hopes that we are moving the needle in the right way. Now, taking a step back from the numbers, I think some of the initiatives that we as an institute have done, and frankly, they are not new initiatives. Very early on, we've shown a gender lens, if I may say so, on one of our senior economists in Japan wrote a report 20 years ago called Womenomics, which is all about the positive impact of investing behind women. And she actually just recently came out with she did a report 5 years ago, sort of 15 years after, now she just issued a new one, speaking about the specific case in Japan. But we have taken that to a further level in some of our non-for-profit initiatives. So more than 10 years ago, we did something called 10,000 Women, where we basically set up a mentoring and a funding program in emerging markets, where we went to markets like Egypt, Nigeria, India, etc., where women could come and apply for to be part of this program, and they would get a mentor from Goldman Sachs, so one of our professionals who would mentor them to set up a business plan, to present a business plan, and then get some funding. So I can give you an idea. For example, one of our first graduates, a woman who set up a catering business in Nigeria, and she employed that funding that she got to buy a car so that she could basically go and deliver her catering merchandise to, and just basically cover more territory. And over time, she built her business, and as she graduated, she mentioned that she had now employed her husband. So he became one of our employees in her business, and that's now a thriving business.
Great.
So that we went on, and just around the financial crisis, we created another program around that called 10,000 Small Businesses, which we've done in the UK and the US. Which also a lot of female entrepreneurs in that. Both of those initiatives are non-for-profit initiatives. I know we'll come on and talk about Launch with GS, which is the evolution of that. But I think those are illustrations and I guess proof points of some of the things we're doing. If I talk about on a personal level, I have never felt more focus and business imperative on this topic since I've been at GS. And David Solomon, who is our new CEO since October, and John Waldron and Stephen Scher, his co-presidents, it's absolutely clear what they want to achieve and how quickly they want to achieve it. And the incoming partner class in November was 28% women. That was the biggest number we've ever seen.
And I suppose the challenge is going to be to see if you can get those women who are coming in at that level to stay through, as you yourself have done. And I know for a short time after you came back from maternity leave, you did a 4-day week, for example. And that's probably a lot easier to do nowadays than it was even 5 or 6 years ago, I'd say. So there are ways, things being implemented, I suppose, to make it a lot easier to stay. So shall we talk about Goldman's launch with GS? Because I know you're a champion for that. So I'll leave you to talk about it. But if you can just give us maybe some up-to-date stats on how much you've committed in investment so far and just the idea behind it.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the 10,000 Women program, the 10,000 Small Businesses, Launch with GS is our first for-profit initiative with a gender lens. And it's really the brainchild of Stephanie Cohen, who is our Chief Strategy Officer. And we announced it in June 2018, and it's basically an initiative we have put $500 million, which are basically existing funds, either balance sheet funds or sitting within our existing investing businesses, whether it's on our fund business or on balance sheet or in our asset management business, where we want to put these $500 million behind female-led businesses or investment managers. And we announced it in June 2018, as I mentioned, $500 million. We've invested $100 million so far.
Okay.
And in a wide-ranging set of businesses. There's a data business in California. There's a pediatric business in China. There's a fast-growing retailer in New York. And then we also have made a number of LP investments, which for confidentiality reasons we can't disclose. But in total, that's about $100 million, and there's some more exciting news to come. So I think we are well on the way to deploy the capital. What I think is exciting about this is the heightened focus that it basically has got. So we announced this last year. We have gotten more than 3,000 inbounds. Wow. In terms of, businesses being referred to us, highlighted to us. Maybe I should just pause for a minute and sort of give you a little bit the criteria. It's really late stage growth investing. So the businesses on the corporate side that we invest in are $5 million in run rate revenues and growing more than 10%. So those are the criteria there. For the investment managers, it tends to be, or it should be like between $75 to $100 million of asset under management with at least one female GP founder or investor. Yeah. But as I said, the exciting thing about this is really the focus it has received. So out of those 3,000 inbounds, we've met with more than 1,000 businesses or investment managers. We've made the investments. Now, it's important to also understand is that we are not changing the criteria. This is a for-profit initiative. So we're not changing the criteria in terms of what we think is a good investment, but we are shining an incremental lens on this. And I think if you think about the sort of three main objectives behind this program is, so find good businesses, founded by a woman, led by a woman, investment manager, as I mentioned. But thirdly, and I do think this is critical, and I spent my career as an investment banker. And I've done different jobs. So I mentioned I joined working for Mark, doing sovereign credit and basically risk management in the credit department. After that, I joined our investment banking group in Team T. It's called CMT at the time, between 1998 and 2003. Then I was a consumer banker for 8 years, and the last 7 years, I've been covering private equity funds. The common denominator between those jobs has always been relationships, networks, basically being able to influence outcome for our clients through advice. The one thing we have discovered through our work is that often women have less access to these networks, and I think it's one of my very dear friends is a lady called Sarah Fryer, who used to be the CFO of Square, and she's now the CEO of Nextdoor, and she set up something called Ladies Who Launch, which is exactly focused on community building. And that's the third building stone in this initiative, where we focus on building networks, communities, mentoring relationships, frankly, access to capital. It might not be our own capital, but it is going to be one of our relationships on the investing side who might want to invest in that type of business. Okay. And basically by supercharging those relationships and building a global community, we hope to be able to drive further progress of these businesses. Great.
Sounds like a really good initiative, so we'll look forward to getting an update in a year or so's time. I just wanted to move on more into investment banking itself and how that's changing going forward. I know innovation is disrupting the way traditional banks work, both retail and investment, and as we heard from Mark Carney this morning, central banks as well are having to rethink about the way they function. And I know Goldman has launched an in-house incubator called GESAccelerate. So I think the aim behind that is for the firm to use its own talent, its own tech talent, to find some innovative solutions to client problems, etc. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And
absolutely.
How it's working?
I mean, first of all, I find it fascinating because I said one of the reasons, sort of one of the constant factors, if you wish, to my business, to our business, is change. And I remember more than 10 years ago, I was part of a program, which was a program inspired by senior management, where they wanted to sort of tap into their, and that was at MD level at the time, into innovative capabilities, so to speak. Our business is changing. At the time, we had a very big prime brokerage business, which was obviously fed by the very significant growth of the hedge fund business and community. And they said, that business in the early 2000s didn't really exist. It grew to become very big and very significant. What's going to be the next big innovation, which is going to grow, drive change? And here we are, sort of 10 years later, and we still have this. Change is the only permanent thing in our operating environment. So basically, GESAccelerate, again, was Stephanie's idea, where she, I think it was really twofold, I guess. One is to, we have about 38,000 employees. We have a lot of very curious, motivated young people. And frankly, a lot of, when I joined banking 20 years ago, it was viewed as a growth industry, and we were growing very, very significantly. And in the last 5 to 10 years, it's fair to say that the tech businesses, or the tech space, has taken that role in terms of growth. Yeah. So we wanted to tap in. We wanted to find a tool where we could show our young people that they could have a real impact on our business, and also, frankly, identify good ideas. At Goldman Sachs, it's very rare that we do things just to do them. And they very often needs to have some sort of profitable angle to it. So GESAccelerate is basically where we will go out to our people and we say, please submit an idea of a business that we could do in-house, which would change or innovate or disrupt ways that we're currently doing things or capitalizing on opportunity. We got 1,000 submissions, and there was a whole sort of process to take this through. You had to submit it, then you had to present it to your business unit leader, then you had to sort of go to a higher up panel, and it was like a funnel. Frankly, not dissimilar to how you go about raising funding in the real world. Yeah. And out of those 1,000 submissions, we selected 8 projects, which we have funded. Great. And they were all very different in nature. One was about a co-working space. And again, going back to our strategy announced by David and John and Stephen, it's all about how do we drive the One Goldman Sachs. And the One Goldman Sachs is about, frankly, the client doesn't really care about whether we sit in securities or investment banking or GSAM, it's One Goldman Sachs. So that was one idea. Another idea was about data analytics. Another idea was about voice recognition and natural language capabilities. And these, frankly, were ideas. These projects were coming from our own young people. We have 7,000 software engineers within Goldman Sachs. It's one of our sort of critical differentiating factors. So I think it's been a great success because we've funded, now let's see how these 8 projects go. But we've funded these businesses, but also, frankly, it's a way of empowering our people and making them feel that they're a part of the business.
We haven't got through all our questions, but I would like to open it up to the audience because we've only got a few minutes left. So does anybody have a question they'd like to put to Anna at all? I can't actually see very well. Otherwise, we can carry on with our own. Yep.
Hi, I work for Financial World. I saw a report about Goldman Sachs using a new software tool to select people. Is it blind in terms of gender and background? People who go through this system, do you have any idea of who's going through it, or is it simply on how they perform?
I didn't understand the question. So.
Yes, sorry, it's a software that's to do...
Software platform to select staff, so pre-interview.
Okay, so I'm not aware of that software program that you're talking about, but maybe you're talking about it for our graduate program. We often have, so we receive, 30,000 CVs, for I can talk for investment banking, and it used to be that it was a very manual process of actually every single banker. Like, for example, I did 20 interviews. I had to do 2 interviews with Mark Carney because he was not convinced about me. And now what we first do is that we have a video interview and we have an online sort of almost like a questionnaire that you sort of respond to, and that's the first filter to then have the in-person interviews. I don't know the software, you know, a video game. Similar to a video game. It could very well be this process that we have of trying to sort of wean down the CVs down to a more manageable number. I will follow up on that, and I'll make sure that I know what it is, actually. Thank you.
Any other questions at all? No? Oh, do we have a little bit more time? Can I ask one more question? So shall we just move on to, because I'm quite interested in this one, what does the investment bank of the future look like? Is it one where all back office and operations are outsourced? You know, the increasing role of data becoming more important, monetized, you know, the impact of this on business model going forward. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, again, if you would take us as an example, I think the truth of the matter is after the financial crisis, we became a bank. We are regulated by the Fed. We are what you call a bank holding company. And therefore, I think you will hear, if you listen to our senior management, they will say we are a bank. Yeah. So the reason why we have launched Marcus, for example, the reason why it is very likely you will see us in cash management, and some of the initiative we're doing is because we are regulated as a bank. We need to comply with a set of rules, which means that we will also want to have some of the benefits of being a bank.
Sure.
This is why we launched Marcus, which has been incredibly successful in terms of raising deposits. And that's a very interesting funding for us.
Yeah.
So I think the investment banking of future, maybe the question is, what will the sort of us and our peers look like in the future? And I think it depends a little bit where you're coming from. Yeah. So obviously we are coming from a pure investment banking past, so therefore we don't have any bank branches. You know, we don't have a big cash management business, which is a very good business, etc. And I think you will see us doing more of that. In terms of, you know, our traditional investment banking business, I would say yes, data is important. I remember when I started, you know, doing a common stock comparison, which is a way of valuing publicly traded businesses, was viewed as technology. It could take like days to, you know, have to get around a report and like, you know, do all this stuff manually. Today, we have automated models which do this. Yeah. So that's just a very sort of a tangible illustration of how that has evolved. And do I think that's going to continue? Yes. I think, frankly, anything which is not differentiated when it comes to relationships, superiority of advice, you know, service, is the same as any business. You know, you can't charge a premium pricing unless the client thinks it's worth it. Yeah. So I think you will see a movement in that in terms of what we really focus on. And then I think you mentioned some of the things that we might do, and I think one of the things that we have in terms of competitive differentiation is our convening power. So we do have relationships with, you know, institutions, companies, individuals, and our ability to convene and create content out of that is something that we haven't really monetized in the past. Yeah. Do I think we're close to monetizing immediately? Maybe not, but it is something which is clearly we are highlighting much more things like, you know, talks at GS, etc., and these various ways. I mean, Goldman Sachs came until the financial crisis, we didn't really communicate with the outside world, you know, willingly. We have very much changed that.
Good. So. Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please join me in thanking Anna for talking to us today.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of your conference.